We have Eric from the International Legion visiting us today. You saw him in our documentary film. He said the words that politicians should repeat: why Ukraine should be in Europe, why Ukraine should defeat evil. Ukraine will never defeat evil on its own.
Political standpoint, it was like economic, great. You're going to bring in another country into the EU, into the West. It's like, well, great. That makes money for everybody if that's your goal. And we should defend people. We should have freedom. We should have democracy. And like, what better? What else is there in life but to fight for those things you believe in? There's nothing else.
Eric, can you please tell me why wars begin? Why do some people simply cross all lines for the sake of their own gain or something else and kill others? Just like that. Because in fact, the human population ranks first in the world for killing each other. Not animals. Nothing kills each other as much as humans do.
I actually don't think that human beings kill each other in any larger number than, say, insects, because ants make war. I mean, and typically when they do that, they once one colony wins, they wipe out the rest of the colony, and that's just the way that they do things. But that's not. I think that's still dodging the question. I think there's something far more fundamental to us that we don't share in common with ants. And it's a hard story, but I think there one possible interpretation from John Steinbeck from East of Eden, I think was a very good. We know the story of Cain and Abel, and that we know that that Abel offered up the fruits to Yahweh, and that Cain offered Abel offered up the lamb to Yahweh, or the meats, and that Cain offered up the fruits of his harvest, and that we know that Yahweh, for whatever reason, and we don't know why, it's never actually said why Yahweh accepts the offering of Abel but not of Cain. But what we do know is that after the fact is that Cain is so bloodthirstily angry about it that Yahweh actually goes and talks to him, and that this only makes him angrier, and then he goes and kills Abel. And Steinbeck had an interesting interpretation of this. He says that Cain thought that he wasn't loved by God, and that in the story East of Eden, what ends up happening is Adam gives his father a puppy, and his brother Charles gives his father a knife. Adam gives his father a puppy, Charles gives his father a knife, and his father, Cyrus Trask, who is an incredibly hard man, loves that dog and doesn't even really care about the knife. And Charles he can't let it go. He just absolutely cannot understand why that is. And so one day he goes and he takes Adam out for a walk and beats him nearly to death. And later on, after Adam crawls away, manages to survive, and then he goes and he comes back to his mother, and his mother asks him, well, why did this happen? He thinks father doesn't love him. And so I actually think that's as good a reason as any why these things happen, why wars happen, is because of some feeling of lack. Because isn't that implied in it? When someone seeks to expand their territory, what are they doing? They're gaining something, which means they lack something. In their own eyes, they lacked something. And so you could say that one of the reasons why these wars happen is the same reason that murders happen, and the same reason that theft happens, is because people want things they don't think they have, and they think those things will make them happy, or they think that they're a substitute for something else.
Today, The world is divided into warriors of light and warriors of darkness. And some people support the warriors of light, whilst others support the warriors of darkness. Why is this? Soldiers in war should fight against soldiers, but should not fight against children. Women should not destroy infrastructure or harm ordinary people who do not know how to fight in this war. Children and elderly people are not ready for this. We see how the Russian army destroys everything on the territory of Ukraine. Destroys everything. The whole world sees it, but the Russian people cannot wake up and see it. Maybe due to an information war and distorted consciousness. Will their people be able to wake up? Will the Russian people understand the harm they are causing and displaying to the world today?
I guess I would have to ask the question is, do you really think that they don't know?
As for me, for example, as a PhD in psychology, I observe that Russian society's consciousness is very distorted. A large part of Russian society firmly believes that they, as the victorious soldiers of World War II, cannot commit war crimes, which they do in Ukraine. Some people definitely know about war crimes. But ordinary people firmly believe that they are liberating Ukraine from fascism, that there is fascism and Nazism here. The majority of people who do not fight, who do not know politics, firmly believe in their President Putin.
Not relevant to the question. However, I think I now understand why you focus so much on repression, or why you enjoy Freud so much and about the repressing of things from childhood. And I think that makes total sense now. I just realized Soviet Union. Yes, okay, makes perfect understanding. Okay, but to go to the question, it's I would say that one of the reasons why they don't believe it, and I don't buy that they don't believe it. I think many of them do know. But for those who have grown up in an information atmosphere where they're bombarded with a million things that tells them like what to not what to believe, but what not to believe, which is a very subtle distinction. I actually think that's gotten them to the point where it's apathy, and I think actually that's more to the point, is that they may very well know what the truth is, and they may also not know what the truth is. And I think what really happens is they simply don't care. They don't care whether what they're hearing is true, and they don't care if what they're hearing is not true, because unless it affects them personally, there's no need to get involved.
Yes, you are telling the truth. And while we were talking before this interview, you have the same feeling inside. I love Freud, who said that a person's behavior is driven by experiences they do not remember. These are things which happened in childhood, those neurodestructive connections that have appeared in people and deceive them. But Freud had a very good student, Alfred Adler. He said, like you and I did, that Freud said that it is practically impossible to get away from this influence. But there were differences between Adler and Freud on this matter. Adler said that it's possible. If a person is creative, if a person has a goal, and the goal is not only be for themselves, but for all mankind, light, goodness, so that all people could be happy, then we can go beyond the action of these destructive neural connections, reflections. As Pavlov says, that a person is a self-programming biological machine. And why create robots, of which there are already many? We really see this ourselves. And when you said that we need to read poetry, that's all about creativity. Creativity will always triumph over what Freud said. Eric, could you please tell me how you see the end of this war and the future of the world?
I think the world will continue more or less as it has since human beings have been around. There is, I don't want to sound too pessimistic, but there's this epigram from a book called Blood Meridian, and I can't remember the exact quote, but it says that a re-examination of a skull that had been found that was 300,000 years old showed evidence of having been scalped. And I think that probably tells you where exactly we're going to go in the future and how things in the world are going to be. It's going to be more of the same. People are going to have their little wars, and people are going to have their lives, and people are going to go along as much as they're possible. If you ask about how things are going to play out geopolitically, I don't know. You know, like there was the rise of authoritarianism in the mid 2000s, which seems actually to be clamped down a little bit. So that's a relief, and it seems like it's going in that way for at least the near future. That countries that democracy is and liberal values in the classical sense are actually are enjoying a resurgence. Beyond that, there's no way of really saying how things are going to play out other than that they're going to keep playing out in the same way that they have for hundreds of thousands of years.
Tell me, please, society is like that now. War is like that. The reason the whole world has seen it is because the information space of society has changed. People can now enter the internet and see what is really happening and make a choice about which side they should take.
So it's interesting that you say that you should be the border between good and evil. So I would caution then. That's what I would say. The advice I would give is the caution to believe that there is only good on your side and only evil on your side, because down that path lies terrible dark things. Because if you take that and you run with it on a long enough timeline, it goes beyond hatred and becomes, you start to look at people as animals, and then you just start killing everything. And I think that's the danger that would have is, and I know that's really, really hard to do, because when someone's bombing your country and killing your friends and your family, and that's a really, really hard thing to do. But I also think it's something that's absolutely necessary to do. Like, you have to do it. Is you have to maintain consciousness of good and evil, and understand that what someone else does not justify your own evil. Because I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot. It was like, when people decide like they want to, back in America, someone will say, will justify stealing from a store or from something. And if you confront them about this, very often what they'll say, well, someone did the same to me. And so then it just perpetuates. And people very often who are good then become villains, and sometimes villains become good. And it's on a long enough time frame, it's almost always the case. Over the time frame of millennia, people become like Germany. Germany is probably the quintessential example. They went from people who embraced a policy of extermination, and now they're actually doing what they can to help prevent the exact same thing from happening. So that's the advice I would give: is pay very close attention to yourself and to what other people are saying.
I agree with Eric. Once the Soviet Union fought against fascism, but it deceived the whole world with one fact. It would never have won the war without the support from the United States, without Lend-Lease. Today, some politicians declare that if Ukraine is not given weapons, then Ukraine will lose. If the whole world did not help the Soviet Union in the war against fascism, the Soviet Union would never have won this war. Dictatorship is dictatorship. And there is democracy. There are people who have the right to their own opinion, and they are not chased, not hunted, not imprisoned. For me, this is democracy. Every person should express their own opinion, their own vision, their own worldview, but not take up a gun and rob other people. We have seen this with examples such as Russia, Soviet Union, and fascist Germany. Today, the fascist has sided with Russia, and we Ukrainians understand this. And we do not want evil to bite us and infect us with all of this. This line is really thin. Today, we had a talented person, a creative person. Actually, a person with a capital letter who is kind-hearted, truly sincere, and speaks what he hears spontaneously, just as it is. As for the words on why Ukraine should win, I would advise him to go into politics and from there help people to become self-aware. Because in one short documentary film, International Legion, the borderless will he conveyed to the entire American and European society why we should not get tired of the war. Thank you. All the best.
Check.